I called my wife at 11:47 on a Tuesday night, standing in the rain outside a broken-down rental car on Route 9, phone signal cutting in and out, dress shirt soaked through. And absolutely no idea how bad the next few hours were about to get. She didn't pick up. I called again, nothing. Third time the call went straight to voicemail in that way that told me she'd pressed decline. I didn't think much of it then. Camille was probably asleep or in the bath or watching one of those murder documentaries she loved with her earbuds in, so I scrolled to the next number I trusted, her best friend Dara. "Hey, it's Marcus. My car died on Route 9 about 4 miles past the Whitmore exit. I tried Camille. She's not picking up. Any chance you could?" "I'm already grabbing my keys," she said. No hesitation, no groaning about the hour, just that low, steady voice like she'd been waiting for something to do. "Stay where you are. Don't get back in the car." She hung up before I could thank her. I stood in the rain and told myself the warmth I felt had everything to do with gratitude. I was lying, of course. But I didn't fully know that yet. Dara arrived 22 minutes later in a black pickup truck that looked too capable for someone who lived in a third-floor apartment downtown. She stepped out wearing an oversized olive canvas jacket over what looked like pajama pants tucked into rain boots, her natural hair pulled up and slightly chaotic. A thermos in one hand and a flashlight in the other. She looked completely unbothered, like rescuing rain-soaked men from dark roadsides was just another Tuesday activity. "You look terrible," she said. "Thank you for coming." Obviously, she shone the flashlight at my car, then walked around it in a slow circle like a doctor examining a patient. "What happened?" "Engine just died." I was on my way back from the Hartfield client dinner. "Pop the hood." "Dara, you don't have to." She looked at me. Just looked at me with those dark eyes that had always had the alarming quality of seeing through whatever professional distance I tried to maintain around her. "Marcus." "Pop the hood." I popped the hood. She leaned in, flashlight moving. I stood beside her, aware of the warmth coming off her despite the rain, aware of the specific way her jacket fell open slightly when she leaned forward. Aware of how ridiculous it was that I was cataloging any of this. "Alternator," she said. "Classic. You're not going anywhere tonight. I can call a tow at midnight on a Tuesday in this county. You'll be here until Thursday." She closed the hood and looked at me again, that look. "Get in the truck." I'd known Dara Osai for 6 years. She'd been Camille's best friend since college, which meant she'd been at our engagement party, at our wedding, at every birthday dinner and New Year's gathering and summer barbecue since. She was 31, a structural engineer, fiercely self-sufficient and completely impossible to charm in the ordinary way most people were charmed. She did not laugh at the things people expected her to laugh at. She did not soften her opinions to make rooms comfortable. She had this particular quality of stillness that made you want to say something real, because you could tell immediately that anything fake would bore her. Camille loved her like a sister. And I had always maintained a careful, respectful, deliberate distance, because I am not an idiot and I knew exactly what that careful distance was protecting. Inside the truck, it was warm and smelled like cedar and something faintly floral. Rain hammered the windshield. She handed me the thermos. "Coffee." "Fair warning, it's strong enough to restart your alternator." I laughed despite myself. "Where were you taking me? Your place is 40 minutes. My apartment is 12. You're soaking wet. We'll figure out the tow company situation and you can change into something that doesn't look like you swam here." She glanced at me sideways. "Unless that's weird for you." It was weird for me. It was also the only reasonable option. "It's not weird," I said. We drove in silence for a while, not uncomfortable silence. The other kind, the kind that has weight to it, that you become aware of as its own presence. "Did you ever get through to Camille?" she asked. "No." She nodded, said nothing. I noticed something shift in her expression, something she chose not to say, and I was suddenly very aware that there were things Dara knew that I didn't. Things about my wife. Things that existed in the private geography of female friendship that I had never been invited into. "Dara, is everything okay with Camille?" She was quiet for 4 full seconds. I counted. "I think you should talk to Camille about that," which was its own kind of answer. Her apartment was exactly what I expected and nothing like what I expected. Small but considered. Books everywhere, engineering texts mixed with novels. A biography of Zaha had it propped open on the coffee table next to a half-finished glass of red wine. Architectural prints on the walls. A drafting table near the window covered in precise, beautiful drawings and plants, an almost aggressive number of plants. Bathrooms through there, she said, pointing. I'll find you something dry. My brother left a bag of clothes here last month after a visit. Should be something your size. She disappeared into her bedroom. I went to the bathroom, stripped off the soaked dress shirt, and looked at myself in the mirror for a moment. 34 years old, married 3 years. Standing in my best friend's wife's best friend's bathroom at midnight with water still dripping from my hair and a very specific, very unwanted clarity forming in my chest. Camille had been pulling away for 4 months. I'd noticed it and told myself it was stress, work, the pressures of a marriage hitting its middle stride, but the phone declining. The turned back in bed, the conversations that ended before they began, and Dara, who knew everything, who had said talk to Camille instead of she's fine. I put my face under the cold tap. She knocked on the door and passed a folded stack of clothes through without opening it fully. Just a sliver of doorway, her hand extended, fingers long and ringless. These should work, she said. Thank you. The hand withdrew, the door clicked. I came out in dark sweats and a heather gray t-shirt that fit well enough. She was standing at the kitchen counter, pouring the red wine into a second glass. She'd taken her jacket off. Underneath, she wore a thin-strapped cotton top that I had no business looking at, so I looked at the drafting table instead. Is that the Kellner Bridge project? I said. She turned, surprised. You know about that? Camille mentioned it, said you'd been working 60-hour weeks. 70 sometimes. She handed me the second wine glass. You follow structural engineering news. I followed that one. The cantilever design got written up in 3 publications. I read them. I glanced at the drawings. Can I look? She watched me for a moment with that expression that I could never fully decode, something between assessment and surprise. Yeah, she said, quieter than usual. Go ahead. I set my glass down and looked at the drawings. They were extraordinary, precise and also somehow alive, the way the best designs have an internal logic that feels like a language. I traced one line with my finger, not touching the paper. The way you've handled the load distribution here, I said, this tension point. That's not conventional. No, she said from right behind me, close enough that I could feel the warmth of her again. She reached past me to indicate a measurement notation, and I went very still. The way you go still when you realize something is happening, and also that you have no clean way to stop it without acknowledging it. I had to argue that into the approval process for 3 months. Everyone kept defaulting to the standard approach. But you were right. I was right, she said simply. I turned. She was close. We both registered it at the same moment, and she stepped back, one half step, enough to normalize things, but not before I saw it, something in her eyes that she closed a door on very quickly. We drank wine, we talked about her bridge and my work in commercial real estate development and her complicated relationship with her own firm's senior partners, and the book open on her coffee table. We did not talk about Camille. We did not talk about the thing in her eyes that she'd closed a door on. At 1:15 in the morning, I arranged a tow truck for 8 a.m. and told her I'd call a rideshare. Don't be stupid, she said. Guest room, it's not a discussion. Dara, the rideshare from here to your house is 45 minutes and it's still raining. Sleep, go get your car tomorrow. Stop making this complicated. She picked up both wine glasses and went to the kitchen and rinsed them out with her back to me, and her voice when she continued was careful, measured. Unless it's complicated for you, in which case say so and I'll stop arguing. I should have said yes, it's complicated, I'll take the rideshare. It's not complicated, I said. The guest room was small and clean with a window that faced the street where rain was still threading down under the amber glow of streetlights. I lay in the dark and stared at the ceiling and thought about Camille. About the version of Camille I'd married, the brightness of her, the way she'd laughed at the engagement party and looked at me like I was the answer to a question she'd been asking her whole life. And I thought about the way that had gone quiet, My phone showed 2 texts from Camille, both sent after midnight. Saw you called. Sorry, was asleep. Hope you're okay. Where are you? Are you home? I texted back at Dara's. Car broke down. She picked me up. Everything fine. Tow truck at 8. 3 minutes passed. Then, okay. Text me when you're on your way home. No, are you okay? No, I'm sorry I missed your call. No, I'll come get you. I put the phone face down and stared at the ceiling until I fell asleep. I woke at 6:30 to the smell of coffee and something cooking. I found Dara in the kitchen in the same pajama pants and a different top, moving between the stove and the counter with that efficient, unhurried energy she brought to everything. Morning light through the kitchen window, rain gone, the city quiet and gold. She looked up when I appeared in the doorway. Something moved across her face quickly, an unguarded moment before she arranged it. Eggs, she said. I don't want to impose more than I already have. Marcus, she pointed at a stool at the kitchen counter. Sit down. I sat down. She made eggs and toast and we ate in the morning light with the radio on low, a jazz station, and something about the domesticity of it was both entirely innocent and completely, dangerously loaded. The way she pushed the butter toward me without looking up, the way I refilled her coffee without asking, "Can I ask you something?" I said. She looked at me steadily. You can try the thing you almost said in the car last night about Camille. I'm asking you directly. She set her fork down. She looked at the window. She looked back at me. And in that moment, I could see her doing the calculus, friendship versus honesty versus self-preservation versus whatever else was moving in her that I was trying not to look at directly. She told me she's been unhappy for a while, Dara said carefully. She asked me to keep it between us. I'm trying to respect that. She held my gaze. But I think you already know. I think you've known for longer than you want to admit. And I think you deserve for someone to tell you that whatever you're trying to do to hold things together, you should probably just have the conversation. The real one. Silence. You're a good person, I said. I'm a person, she said with a small edge, who is trying very hard to be a good friend to someone who is also your wife. So let's not make this anything other than what it is. What is it? Her eyes met mine. She looked away first, which was unusual for Dara, who never looked away first. Breakfast, she said. That's what it is. I met the tow truck at 8. Dara drove me to my car and stayed long enough to talk to the driver, who she apparently knew from a previous roadside situation of her own. And then she handed me back my mostly dry dress shirt in a folded paper bag and said, "Call me if the alternator place gives you trouble." I know a guy. Of course you do, she almost smiled, that near smile that I had noticed 6 years ago and filed under do not think about this. Tell Camille I said hi, she said. She got back in her truck and drove away. Camille and I had the conversation 3 days later. It was a Saturday morning, coffee on the table between us, and she sat across from me with her hands wrapped around her mug and told me that she hadn't been in love with me for over a year. That she'd been trying to get it back and hadn't been able to, that she was sorry, that she didn't want to hurt me, that she'd been terrified to say it out loud because saying it would make it real. I listened to every word. I told her I'd felt it, that I'd been afraid of it, that I'd been waiting for her to find her way back, that I wasn't angry, that I was devastated. That both of those things were true at the same time. We held each other in the kitchen for a long time, not because we were staying, but because 6 years of genuine love deserved a proper goodbye. She moved into Dara's guest room 2 weeks later, the same guest room I'd slept in. I told myself that meant nothing. I was practicing telling myself things. For the next 6 weeks, I did not contact Dara. I was disciplined about it. I threw myself into work, into the Hartfield development project. Into running and cooking and the kind of obsessive apartment reorganization that means you are not dealing with anything emotional, but at least your kitchen is very well organized. Our separation was quiet. Camille and I were civil, sad, and genuinely kind to each other, which was somehow worse than a dramatic implosion. We divided things without fighting. We called our respective families, we filed the initial paperwork, and then, because the universe has no mercy, I ran into Dara, not accidentally. She texted me. The Kellner Bridge project is opening next month. Press event is Thursday. I have an extra ticket. I know you read the write-up, so I'm asking if you want to come. Say no if it's weird. I stared at the text for 11 minutes. I'll come, I wrote back. The event was at the bridge itself, which was both architecturally breathtaking and a completely absurd place to have a press cocktail event because there was wind and the lighting required elaborate rigging, and everyone kept gripping their champagne glasses slightly too firmly. It was also undeniably stunning. The cantilever swooped out over the river in this elegant, confident arc, and standing on it felt like standing on someone's best idea. Dara was across the crowd when I arrived, in conversation with what appeared to be 3 journalists and a city commissioner, wearing a dark green structured dress that I had to consciously decide not to think about. She looked up, found me immediately in the crowd, and gave me a single nod, the kind that said glad you came without saying it. I talked to strangers about the bridge. I drank champagne. I looked at the cantilever and thought about a drawing on a table at midnight, a finger tracing a load point, the warmth of someone standing behind me. She found me at the railing after most of the formal presentations had finished. Well, she said, it's extraordinary, I said. You know it is. I wanted someone here who actually understood why. She said it simply, without coyness, which somehow made it hit harder than any flirtation would have. Someone who read the write-ups, 3 publications. 4, she said. There was a German one. I missed that one. I'll send it to you. We stood at the railing and looked out at the river. The city lights were starting to come up on the far bank. The wind moved her hair. How are you? She asked, and the way she asked it, low and direct, was different from how people usually asked. She meant it as a real question. I'm functional, I said, getting better at it. Camille is, she paused, she's working through things. She told me to tell you she's sorry again if I saw you. She doesn't need to keep apologizing. I know, I told her that too. Another pause. She also told me she thinks you're going to be okay. She said that very specifically, like she needed me to know it. I looked at her profile, the sharp, clean line of her jaw, the way she kept her eyes on the river, careful. Why would she need you to know that? I said quietly. Dara turned to face me, full face, full eye contact, none of the looking away she'd done on other occasions. She held it long enough to be its own kind of answer. Marcus, she said, in a voice I hadn't heard from her before, lower and more exposed. Don't ask me things you already know the answer to. The wind moved between us. Someone laughed on the far side of the event. The bridge held everything. Okay, I said. Okay, she said. Neither of us moved. We walked to a wine bar 2 blocks from the bridge. We did not discuss whether we were going or together. We were just suddenly walking and then just suddenly sitting across from each other in a small dark booth with a candle between us and a bottle of something the bartender recommended. And it felt inevitable, which was either beautiful or dangerous, and probably both. Tell me something true, she said. Right now, you're stalling. I'm not stalling. I'm selecting. I leaned forward. The candle between us caught the gold in her eyes. I noticed you 6 years ago at the engagement party. And I spent 6 years being extremely disciplined about not thinking about it. Because I was in love with my wife and you were her best friend, and because I'm not someone who plays those kinds of games. That's a true thing. She didn't look away, didn't flinch, just absorbed it with that stillness she had. Your turn, I said. You want one, she said. I told you a 6-year secret. You owe me something. She was quiet for a moment, looking at the candle, then she looked up. I was relieved when you called that night, she said. When you called me instead of getting through to Camille, I picked up the phone and heard your voice and I thought good, and I hated myself for it immediately, and I still came to get you. Those are 2 true things. The candle between us felt very small. Dara, I said. I know, she said. We can't. I know that too, she said. The separation is 6 weeks old. She's my best friend. There's no version of this that doesn't. She stopped, pressed her lips together, looked at me directly. I've been telling myself no for a long time, Marcus. I'm good at it. I'll keep being good at it. I'm not sure I'm as good at it as you are. Something in her eyes shifted. A slow change, like weather. Then one of us needs to be, she said softly. We sat in the candlelight and talked until midnight. Not about us, about her bridge, about my next project, about her relationship with her mother, about a trip I'd taken to Portugal the year before our wedding. about books and architecture and the specific sadness of cities at night. We talked the way people talk when they're trying to fill something up with words instead of action. At midnight, she said she had to be up at 6 for a site walkthrough. I walked her to her car. It was the black pickup truck, of course it was. She stood with her back to the driver's door, keys in hand, and looked at me. "Thank you for coming," she said. "Thank you for the ticket." Silence. City sounds, the weight of 10,000 unspoken things. I stepped back, made the decision to step back with my whole body, deliberately feeling it as a physical act. "Good night, Dara. Good night, Marcus." She held my gaze. "Call me if your alternator dies again." "I will," I said. "I'll call you first." She got in the truck. I stood on the sidewalk until the taillights turned the corner. Then I stood there a little longer. 2 months passed. I ran into her twice, once at a birthday dinner for Camille that I'd been invited to before everything had changed, and somehow still attended in the name of civility, which was an act of impressive group emotional maturity and also quietly excruciating. Dara sat at the far end of the table. We made eye contact across 17 people and a large floral arrangement, and she raised her glass at me very slightly, and I looked at my plate. The second time was accidental. A coffee shop near my office on a Wednesday morning. And she walked in while I was waiting for my order, and we both stopped for a half second in that way where the body registers something the mind is still catching up with. "Hi," she said. "Hi," I said. We ordered at the same counter. We waited for our drinks at the same spot. The silence was extraordinary in its texture, not awkward but dense, packed with every conversation we'd chosen not to have. Her name was called. She picked up her cup. She turned to go. "Dara, I didn't plan to say it." She turned back. "I'm handling it," I said, meaning the 6 weeks, the separation. The process of getting my life to a place where I could stand in front of her without 6 different categories of complication in the way. I want you to know that. "I'm handling it." She looked at me for a long moment, then slowly she nodded. "I know you are," she said. "I can see it." "How long?" I asked. "How long what? How long are you going to keep telling yourself no?" She held the coffee cup with both hands, and for just a second, just 1 second, she was not composed, not contained. Not the structural engineer who had won 3-month arguments with approval committees. She was a woman standing in a coffee shop who looked like she was genuinely, quietly struggling. "Until it makes sense to stop," she said. She walked out. I picked up my coffee. My hand was not completely steady. The divorce was finalized on a cold November Thursday. I took myself to a good restaurant, ordered something I'd always wanted to try, and sat alone at the bar with a glass of something expensive, and I grieved it properly. I grieved the marriage I'd wanted it to be, the version of Camille and me that had existed in the first years, the life that had felt for a while like the right one. Then I paid the bill and went home. That night at 10 o'clock I typed a message to Dara. "It's finalized. I'm okay. I just wanted you to know." She read it. I watched the read receipt appear. 15 minutes passed. Then, "I know, Camille told me. I'm glad you're okay." "Are you really?" "Getting there," I wrote. "Can I take you to dinner?" Another pause. Longer. "Marcus, I know," I typed. "I know it's still complicated. I know there's no clean version of this. I know she's your best friend and I was her husband, and the timing is still raw, and if you say no, I will respect it completely and we will never speak of it again. But I've been telling myself things for 2 months and I think I've run out of things to tell myself, so I'm asking." The typing indicator appeared, disappeared, appeared again, disappeared. I put my phone down, picked it up, put it down again, made tea, drank half of it, picked up the phone. Her message: "Saturday, 7 o'clock, you choose the place. And if you take me somewhere boring, I'll never forgive you." I exhaled slowly into the quiet apartment. Then I smiled, the first full, real, unguarded smile I'd produced in I couldn't remember how long, and I started looking up restaurants. She wore burgundy on Saturday. I noticed it from across the restaurant before she saw me, the way the color moved when she walked. The way she paused in the entrance and looked around the room with that self-possessed stillness of hers before her eyes found me, and she crossed toward me like she'd made a decision and was done deliberating. I stood when she approached the table, old habit. She looked at me at the standing and something in her expression went briefly, privately warm. Nice place, she said, sitting down. Not boring, I said. Not boring, she agreed. We ordered, we talked. The thing that was different from every other conversation we'd had was that we were allowed to let the subtext be text. That we didn't have to perform careful, measured friendship. The tension that had lived under every exchange for 6+ years was allowed, for the first time, to exist on the surface, and what surprised me was how much lighter it made everything. How much energy I'd been spending containing it. I had a conversation with Camille, Dara said after the first course. I looked at her. About the fact that I had feelings for you that I had not acted on but that were present, yes. I told her directly because she's my best friend and she deserved to know, and because I am not capable of doing something this significant without being honest about it. I let that sit. What did she say? Dara's expression was complicated and tender. She said she'd known for a long time. She paused, choosing words. She said that she thought you'd loved her as hard as she'd loved you, and that things stopped working the way they sometimes stop working. And that she'd rather the people she loved be happy than preserve some notion of loyalty that didn't serve anyone. She met my eyes. She also said that if I hurt you, she would consider it a personal betrayal, so, no pressure, I said. None at all, she agreed. I reached across the table and touched her hand. Just that, a hand over a hand, fingers over fingers, the first deliberate touch between us in 6 years of carefully maintained distance. She looked down at it, then up at me, and she turned her hand over slowly until her fingers were interlaced with mine. I'm terrifying, she said quietly. I need you to know that up front. I am not easy, I am opinionated, and I work too many hours, and I need a lot of autonomy, and the last person who tried to be with me said I was impossible. He sounds boring, I said. He was, she admitted, but the critique wasn't entirely wrong. I read the engineering write-ups voluntarily, I said. I know what I'm getting into, she laughed, a real one, low and surprised. Her hand tightened on mine. Marcus, Dara, if we do this, we do it right, no half measures. No, whatever this is stops being complicated once we've decided it's real. Agreed, and you tell me if you're still too close to the grief to be fair to both of us. I will, I said. Same to you, same to me, she said, with a flicker of something that told me there was more to her end of this than she'd fully shown me yet. Which felt true, felt right. We were both people who had been carrying things, and we'd need time to put them down in full view of each other. The waiter refilled our glasses. We let go of each other's hands to eat. Under the table, her knee found mine and stayed there, a quiet, deliberate point of contact. And we carried on talking about everything and nothing with that particular electricity that had nowhere left to hide. I walked her to her truck at the end of the night. Of course it was her truck. Of course it was parked under a streetlight on a quiet block, and of course the city was cold and clear and giving us no help in the form of awkward crowd noise or interruptions. She faced me with her back to the truck door, which I recognized from 2 months ago. Different occasion, different charge. This is the part, she said, where I have to tell you that I'm not kissing you on the first date. Okay, I said. I'm deeply principled, I know that about you. I've wanted to for 6 years and I'm still not doing it tonight. I stepped close, not kissing distance. Close enough that I could see the particular quality of her composure, maintained, but costing her something. I could see the breath she was managing deliberately. I could feel the warmth of her in the cold air. Good night, Dara, I said, low, direct, not moving. Her eyes were dark and steady. You're doing that on purpose, she said. Yes, I said. That's infuriating, I know. She looked at me for one long, scorching, complicated moment. Then she put one hand against my chest, flat, deliberate, not pushing me back so much as measuring the distance, and her fingers curled slightly into the fabric of my jacket. Call me tomorrow, she said. First thing, I said. She got in the truck. I stepped back. She started the engine and I watched the taillights, and this time when they turned the corner, I was smiling. We dated for 4 months before Camille had dinner with us. It was her idea, and it was awkward for approximately the first 7 minutes, and then it was just 3 people who cared about each other in complicated configurations sitting over pasta and wine. And at one point, Camille caught my eye across the table while Dara was telling a story, and she gave me a look that was sad and genuine and also unmistakably approving. Like she was releasing something she'd been holding. I nodded at her. She nodded back. Some things don't need words. 3 months after that, I was standing in Dara's apartment, which I now knew intimately, every plant and drafting table and precise. Beautiful drawing, and when she came out of the bedroom holding a rolled set of blueprints and said, "The firm offered me the lead position on the Nakamura Tower project." "That's in Tokyo," I said. 18 months, she said. She wasn't apologizing for it. She was standing in the kitchen watching me process it because she'd told me she was not easy and she'd meant it. I crossed the apartment. I took the blueprints gently from her hands and set them on the counter. I put my hands on either side of her face and she looked up at me with those dark, steady, see-through-everything eyes. "Take it," I said. "Marcus, take it. 18 months is not forever. That project will have your name on it for the rest of your career." I searched her face. "Don't make yourself smaller for someone else's comfort, not even mine." She stared at me. Something in her face broke open very slightly, in the way things break open when someone says the exact right thing in the exact right way. "You'd wait," she said quietly. "I spent 6 years not being able to have you," I said. "I think I can manage 18 months of having you from a distance." She brought her hands up over mine, held them to her face. Closed her eyes. "This is not how I thought this conversation would go," she said. "I know," I said. "I have that effect sometimes." She laughed, eyes still closed. Then she opened them, and the look she gave me was not composed, was not contained, was not the structural engineer who argued with approval committees. It was just Dara, completely undefended, looking at me like I was something she hadn't expected to get to have. She kissed me first. She would probably dispute this, but the record shows it was her. Full and certain and warm, with both hands on my face, and the apartment around us with all its books and plants and precise drawings, and whatever 6-year-old distance I'd maintained finally. Completely and without regret dissolved. I think about that Tuesday night sometimes. The rain on Route 9, the dead car, the 3 missed calls, the small stupid chance of a broken alternator. The way she said I'm already grabbing my keys without a moment's hesitation, not because she knew what it would lead to, but because she was Dara and that was just who she was. And I think so much of what we call timing is really just the accumulation of choices. All the small deliberate decisions to maintain the correct distance, to say the right thing, to be disciplined and good, they don't cancel out the feeling. They just hold it in suspension until the suspension becomes unsustainable. She's in Tokyo now, we talk every day. The time difference makes it interesting. Her morning is my previous night, which means she often wakes up to messages from the version of me that exists after midnight. Which she says is her favorite version because I'm less edited. I'm choosing to take that as a compliment. She sent me a photo last week of the Nakamura Tower site at sunrise, the steel skeleton rising against a pink sky with the caption, "My cantilever is more elegant than anything in the skyline, and I'm not apologizing for saying so." I sent back, "Obviously, come home soon." Her reply 3 seconds later, "Call you in an hour." And here's what I keep coming back to, the question that lives underneath all of it. How many people do we love from a careful, disciplined distance? Convincing ourselves that the maintaining of that distance is integrity, when really it's fear of complication, fear of the cost, fear of what it would mean to admit the thing we're holding. And how often does the right moment look from the outside like a breakdown, like a dead car on a dark road in the rain, before it reveals itself as the opening it actually was? I'm not saying blow up your life for every feeling. I'm saying be honest about what you're holding and why, and whether the holding is nobility or cowardice. Sometimes it's both. Usually it's both. I called my wife for help. Her best friend came instead. Changed my jacket, made me eggs, told me to have the real conversation, stood at a bridge railing and said, "Don't ask me things you already know the answer to." And then waited, we both waited, until the geography of things had shifted enough that we could stand in the same room without 5 layers of necessary pretense between us. And she still says that if the alternator dies again, I should call her first. I will, I always will. What would you do if you realized the person you'd been keeping at a careful, respectful distance was exactly the reason you needed to stop keeping that distance? How long do you hold on to what's appropriate before you have to ask yourself who that's actually protecting? Leave your answer in the comments. I read every single one, and I mean it. If this story moved you or made you think, hit like and share it with someone who understands that the most complicated feelings aren't always the wrong ones. And if you're new here, subscribe. We tell stories about the messy, real, impossible parts of love that don't fit neatly into any category. There are more coming. Don't miss them.